I clutched my side, each breath sending waves of pain through my body as Mom drove me to the emergency room. "Remember Olivia," she said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "You were running down the stairs and tripped. That's all. It was an accident." I wanted to scream at her, tell her we both knew exactly what happened. How Marcus had shoved me from behind when I refused to give him access to my college savings account. How she'd stood there, frozen, as I tumbled down 14 stairs, my body crashing against each step before landing in a crumpled heap at the bottom. But I stayed quiet. At 19, I'd learned that silence was safer. The emergency room was surprisingly empty for a Thursday night. A nurse with kind eyes and graying hair led us to an examination room, introducing herself as Sarah. She helped me onto the bed, noticing how I winced with each movement. "Can you tell me what happened, sweetheart?" she asked, her pen poised over the admission form. Mom jumped in before I could speak. She was running down the stairs, wasn't paying attention. "You know how teenagers are, always in a rush." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Nurse Sarah's eyes never left my face. "Is that what happened, Olivia?" I opened my mouth, but Mom's warning look stopped me. "Yes," I whispered. "I fell." The nurse made a note, then asked Mom to step out so she could examine me. "Hospital policy," she said firmly when Mom tried to protest. "We need to check for injuries privately." Once Mom left, Nurse Sarah's demeanor changed. "Olivia," she said softly, "I need you to be honest with me. Did someone push you down those stairs?" Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them back. "I can't," I whispered. "He'll know if I tell." She nodded understanding, then began her examination. When she pressed against my ribs, I gasped in pain. "We'll need x-rays," she said. "Several of them." The x-ray room was cold, but the technician was gentle as she positioned me. Each movement was agony, but I bit my lip and endured it. I'd had worse. While we waited for the results, Nurse Sarah kept Mom occupied with paperwork in the waiting area. She brought me ice for my bruises and spoke in soothing tones about nothing in particular, but I could see something brewing behind her professional demeanor. When the x-rays came back, her face changed. She stared at the images for a long time, then called in Dr. Martinez. They spoke in hushed tones, pointing at various spots on the illuminated screen. "Olivia," Dr. Martinez said finally, "these x-rays show something concerning. Not just today's injuries, but evidence of previous fractures, some partially healed, others that never set properly. Can you explain this?" I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew about some of those injuries. The time Marcus had twisted my arm behind my back, the accidental push into the kitchen counter, but I'd never been to a doctor for them. Mom always said we could handle it at home. "I'm clumsy," I stammered, the rehearsed excuse feeling like ash in my mouth. "I fall a lot." Nurse Sarah sat beside me, her voice gentle but firm. "These aren't falling injuries, honey. We've seen this pattern before. These are defensive wounds. Someone has been hurting you, and from the look of these x-rays, it's been going on for quite a while." My carefully constructed wall of denial began to crack. Years of hidden bruises, explained away injuries, and silent tears threatened to spill out. Nurse Sarah held my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "We can help you," she said. "But you need to tell us the truth. Was it your stepfather who pushed you down those stairs today?" In that moment, looking into her compassionate eyes, I made a decision. I was tired of living in fear, tired of protecting the man who had terrorized me for the past 5 years while my mother looked the other way. I squeezed Nurse Sarah's hand and nodded, tears finally breaking free. "Yes," I whispered. "Marcus pushed me, and it wasn't the first time." She pulled out her phone, her expression resolute. "I'm calling someone who can help. You're not going back to that house tonight, Olivia. You're safe now." As she dialed, I closed my eyes, exhausted but somehow lighter. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe, despite my broken ribs. Someone finally saw the truth, and they weren't going to look away. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. A police officer, Detective Lisa Torres, arrived and took my statement while Nurse Sarah stayed by my side, her presence keeping me grounded. Mom wasn't allowed in the room during the interview, and I could hear her protesting in the hallway. "These injuries tell a story," Detective Torres said, examining the x-rays. "Multiple fractures at different stages of healing. This isn't a pattern we see with accidents." I told her everything. About how Marcus came into my life when I was 14, charming and kind at first. How things changed after the wedding, starting with small incidents, a grip too tight on my arm, a playful shove that was anything but playful. how it escalated over the years, and how Mom always found ways to explain it away. It controls all our money, I explained, my voice shaking. That's what started today's incident. I have a savings account from my grandmother and he wanted access to it. When I refused, he pushed you down the stairs, Detective Torres finished, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. My mom saw it happen, I added quietly. She just stood there. A social worker named Maya joined us, explaining that they couldn't let me return home. We have a safe house where you can stay tonight, she said. We'll help you figure out the next steps. That's when Mom burst into the room, her face tear-streaked but angry. This is ridiculous. Marcus would never hurt Olivia intentionally. She's making this into something it's not. Nurse Sarah stepped between us protectively. Mrs. Crawford, your daughter has multiple injuries consistent with long-term abuse. As medical professionals, we're mandated reporters. You don't understand, Mom pleaded. Marcus has a temper sometimes, but he loves us. Olivia just needs to learn not to provoke him. Her words hit me like another push down the stairs. Detective Torres must have noticed my reaction because she firmly escorted Mom from the room. Maya helped me gather my things while explaining what would happen next. We're filing an emergency protective order, she said. Marcus will be arrested tonight and you'll be safe at our facility. But what about my college fund? I asked, suddenly remembering what had started all this. If he gets access, we'll help you secure your accounts, Maya assured me. You're legally an adult and that money is yours. As they wheeled me out of the emergency room, hospital policy, despite my insistence that I could walk, I saw Mom standing with Marcus by the entrance. He must have shown up while they were processing my paperwork. His face was a mask of concerned confusion, the same look he perfected over years of fooling everyone around us. But this time was different. This time, there were x-rays that showed the truth. There were professionals who could see through his act. You're going to regret this, he called out as they loaded me into Maya's car. After everything I've done for you. Detective Torres stepped between us, her hand resting meaningfully on her badge. Mr. Crawford, I suggest you refrain from making threats. We have enough evidence here for multiple felony charges. As we drove away, I watched Mom clutching Marcus's arm in the rearview mirror, both of them growing smaller until they disappeared. Nurse Sarah had slipped me her personal number, written on the back of a care instruction sheet. Call me if you need anything, she'd said. You're not alone anymore. At the safe house, a peaceful building with security cameras and coded entries, Maya showed me to a small but comfortable room. Get some rest, she said. Tomorrow, we'll start working on a long-term plan. That night, despite the pain in my ribs and the uncertainty of my future, I slept better than I had in years. For the first time since Marcus entered our lives, I didn't have to listen for footsteps in the hallway or worry about what might trigger his next explosion. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom throughout the night. Please come home. We can work this out. Marcus is devastated. How could you do this to him? You're tearing this family apart. I turned off my phone and looked out the window at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight I was safe. Tonight, thanks to a nurse who refused to look the other way, I was finally free. 3 months later, I sat in the courthouse, my hands steady as I testified about years of abuse. Nurse Sarah sat in the gallery, having taken a personal day to support me. She'd become more than just the nurse who helped me escape. She was my anchor through the storm that followed. Marcus sat with his lawyer, still playing the role of the misunderstood stepfather. Mom was beside him, but she looked smaller somehow, less certain than she had that night at the hospital. The evidence was impossible to ignore. My x-rays displayed on a large screen, showing years of systematic abuse, each injury dated and documented. The pattern of injuries, the medical expert testified, is consistent with ongoing physical abuse, not accidental falls or clumsiness. My grandmother arrived from Florida to support me, fury in her eyes when she learned what had happened to her granddaughter. She'd set up that savings account to protect my future, never imagining it would become the catalyst for my escape. Now she sat behind me, her presence giving me strength. You did the right thing, she whispered during a break. I wish I had known sooner. The trial lasted 4 days. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint me as a rebellious teenager making false accusations, but the medical evidence told a different story. Detective Torres presented a thorough case, including statements from neighbors who had heard arguments and suspected something was wrong, but never reported it. When the verdict came in, Marcus was sentenced to 7 years in prison. The judge also granted a permanent restraining order protecting me from both him and, at my request, my mother. Her failure to protect me, her active participation in covering up the abuse, had severed our relationship beyond repair. You have shown remarkable courage, the judge said to me. This court hopes you can now begin to heal and build the life you deserve. Outside the courthouse, Nurse Sarah hugged me carefully, mindful of my still healing ribs. I'm so proud of you, she said. You know, in 20 years of nursing, I've seen too many people trapped in situations like yours. Not all of them find the strength to break free. My grandmother had insisted I move to Florida with her, where she'd already enrolled me in a local college. Your savings account is intact, she assured me. Marcus never got his hands on it. That money will help you build a new life. That evening, I packed my belongings from the safe house where I'd spent the past 3 months. Maya helped me carry boxes to my grandmother's car, pausing to hand me a card with contact information for a trauma counselor in Florida. You're one of our success stories, she said, smiling. But healing takes time. Don't be afraid to ask for help. As we prepared to leave for Florida, Mom made one last attempt to contact me, sending a message through my grandmother. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared too. Please forgive me. But I wasn't ready for forgiveness. Maybe someday I'd be able to understand her choices, but for now, I needed to focus on my own healing. The drive to Florida with my grandmother was peaceful. We talked about my plans for college, my dreams of becoming a social worker, inspired by the people who had helped me escape. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence, watching the landscape change from familiar to new. 6 months later, I stood in front of a group of nursing students at my local college, sharing my story as part of their training on recognizing signs of abuse. Nurse Sarah had connected me with the program director, suggesting that my experience could help future healthcare workers understand the importance of their role. Sometimes, I told them, all it takes is one person willing to look beyond the surface, to ask the right questions to show someone they're not alone. One person who refuses to accept I fell as an explanation when the evidence says otherwise. After the presentation, a student approached me. How did you find the courage to speak up? She asked. I thought about that night in the emergency room, about Nurse Sarah's gentle persistence, about Detective Torres's unwavering support, about Maya's quiet strength, and about my grandmother's unconditional love. I didn't find courage all at once, I answered. Sometimes courage finds you when someone else is brave enough to stand beside you and say, this isn't right, and I'm going to help you. Looking out at the future nurses, I saw in their faces the same determination I had seen in Nurse Sarah's eyes that night, and I knew that somewhere another survivor would find their voice because someone cared enough to listen. My ribs had healed, but the real healing was in knowing I had broken the cycle of abuse. I was safe, I was free, and I was helping others find their way to freedom too. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to our true purpose. Mine had led me here, and I wouldn't waste the chance I'd been given.